I think we're about ready to go. Nedra, are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, hey, everybody. This is Cory Huff with theabundantartist.com, and this is the Web Hosting and WordPress for Artists webinar with Nedra Rosinas from Blue Deer Forest Hosting. And Nedra, thank you very much for being here. And why don't we just go ahead and hand some time off to you right now? Everybody,
hmm
this webinar will be about an hour long. There will, of course, be a recording made available later, and if anybody has questions, feel free to dump those into the questions menu there in the GoToMeeting, and we'll try to get to everybody's questions. We may not answer them in real time. We may wait until Ned just covered some of it, but we'll try to make sure that we answer everybody's questions, and we'll try not to make this very complex and very dry topic. We'll try to make it very, very interesting and very simple to understand. Nedra, thanks again. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about what we're going to talk about today?
Thanks, Cory. Yeah, my name is Nedra Rosinas, and I own Blue Deer Forest Hosting. I've had this company for about 8 years, and I've been in the web industry and web design industry for about 14, 15 years. So I've been doing it a long time and seen a lot of changes in the just recently, like in the last 5 years with WordPress and all these different web design tools out there. Um, So yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys about web hosting and WordPress because there can be really dry topics like Cory mentioned, but I wanted to make them interesting because there's so many times when I meet people or talk to my friends about what I do or what I did today, I start talking about web hosting, their eyes glaze over and they just look at me like, why are you talking about this? So I have some fun ways to talk about that, and I want to also touch on why web hosting is important for artists and what are some great features that would be useful for yourself, and talk about how to set up WordPress and 5 easy steps, and then WordPress themes, because that's a really overwhelming topic to tackle and to where to start and what to look for. And so let's get started right now. And I like to use the analogy of a home when you're talking about web hosting because it's something we all can identify with. So we'll be using that for the next few slides to kind of to tackle some topics that you probably hear a lot, and some of you might this might just be a review, but some of you out there might be kind of a new way to learn it.
Yeah, we can probably assume most of the people on the recording now are novices and don't know very much.
Yeah. So that's why we're starting from scratch here. So first off, let's talk about the domain of your house. I'm sorry, the domain is like the address of your house. We all have an address where we live, and so every website has a domain, and the domain name is usually just your web address. Facebook.com is the one for Facebook. You register your domain through a registrar such as Network Solutions, or web hosting companies such as GoDaddy do that too, and the cost is usually around $10 to $15 a year. And so back in the old days, we used to have phone books, and you'd look up someone's address that way, that's where they live, or you could go find them. And now we have Google, so we can type in, let's say you're looking up, you don't know the exact domain name for an art gallery, but you're trying to find it, so you can type it into Google and it will instantly take you there. So it's nice to think of domain names as a address or a pointer to websites. And one thing I want to talk about a little bit later, but just to think about is, if you have one website, you can have multiple domain names pointing to that same website. And it's a great way to experiment with what works, what drives people to your website, what do they remember. Maybe you do a combination of different names in the domain, or you have the same domain that has .com, .net, .org. There's different ways to play with those combinations that work for you.
Right. So if I were going to have multiple domain names, maybe I wanted to make sure I had every variation of my name. So I had coryhuff.com, but then I also had coryhuffartist.com or coryhuffineartist.com or
Mm-hmm.
coryhuffbestartistintheworld.com, and
Right.
and have them all pointing to the same website that ends up being coryhuff.com.
Right. And the other thing to remember is, when you're creating domain names, you don't want things that are hard to spell or hard to remember. Sometimes dashes can work against you. It's really good to keep it as simple as possible. And, they always say all the domains are taken. They're not. You have to just be creative about finding out where they're at. And I've seen lists where you can find out expired domains that maybe expired in the last year that are up for grabs, and we have to pay hundreds of dollars for them. So there's all these tricks out there if you want to get deep and into that type of thing. And so the next thing we'll talk about is how your web host is like the plot of land your house is built on, because as you have your house, you always have the land that your house is located in. And so it's nice to use this analogy when you're thinking about a website, because websites just seem so nebulous. They're just floating out in space, it seems. But no, they're actually made up of text and photos and videos and pixels and all these things, and they have to go somewhere. They can't just float out in space. And so web hosting companies give you space on a server, so you can build your website on those within inside of the web hosting or inside the space on the server, and you're also having your email there and your web statistics and all these other things that make up that space. And so these web hosting companies have these servers and computers that are always running 24/7, so you can always have your website up and running. And that kind of helps me just think about just when I'm building a new website, kind of just more of a concrete way of thinking about it versus just transparency and just having it just float out there. Because I think a lot of people just those interwebs, what's going on out there, what's happening, but it really, there are server farms and your stuff is sitting on there somewhere. And so let's talk a little bit more about servers, because these are some really just really complex topics that don't really get covered very well, and I'd like to explain them because I think they can be really tricky to understand. So you think about all these web hosting companies have all these servers, and in a sense, they're kind of like a neighborhood, because most folks usually start out with shared web hosting. I'll kind of break this down in a second, but the shared web hosting, all these websites are sitting on the same server and they're sharing resources. But it's not like a neighborhood where you're saying, hey, neighbor across the street. You're sharing these resources, but you don't really necessarily know who your neighbors are. And shared web hosting is great because it's usually pretty affordable, and it's the first place to start when you have a website. And you don't have like super heavy level access to things, but you don't necessarily need it because you're not doing anything too crazy. You just have your website, your WordPress site, maybe a couple of them on there, and that's it. So if you're doing some more heavier level processes, maybe you have a really robust e-commerce site or something like that, then you step up to what's called VPS hosting, or virtual private machine is the abbreviation, or what it stands for. And the resources are still shared on this hosting, but it's more expensive because it's running its own copy of the operating system, and the customers have much more of a super access to do things. And then if you have, like Flickr.com, something like that, where there's constantly people uploading and downloading photos all the time and just hitting the server constantly, you have what's called dedicated hosting. And I'm sure someone like Flickr has like multiple servers running these photos for them, and so they have these servers that they don't have to share. And it's definitely more expensive. It's one of the most expensive hostings out there, but they have full control of the server. It's usually higher performance. The security's better. You have better support. Everything's just a little much higher quality. So, but for the most part, I think most of the folks here today, shared web hosting will be just fine for what your needs are. And
Hey,
definitely
Nedra,
to yes,
we're getting requests for you to speak up a little bit.
Okay, sorry. I will definitely do that. No problem.
Yeah. So what you're talking about with the hosting here is
Uh-huh.
basically, shared hosting is the cheap thing. VPS hosting is maybe for those artists who are having a little more success and seeing their web traffic start to pick
Mm-hmm.
up. And then dedicated
Right.
hosting is for like the world famous artists.
Right. So yeah, let's say you have a lot of bandwidth. Maybe you're doing some great your marketing and your social media plans are working out great. So yeah, your VPS hosting would be the next step up if your bandwidth, which basically bandwidth is something where just you have all these different people hitting the server at once, and it needs a lot more resources to handle it and not take the site down. That's when you definitely start thinking about VPS hosting or dedicated hosting. But dedicated hosting, like I said, is usually a much more serious website, like Facebook and Flickr and those type of websites.
Right. So maybe you could give us some guidance, Nedra, on what
Sure.
sort of hosting a person might, like an artist might need if they're just getting started, and when they might need to move up to virtual private hosting.
Right. So a lot of plans out there usually start that I've seen with shared web hosting start at like 1 or 2 gigs of space, which you think about it, it's a lot of space. I think you could probably fit a couple different WordPress sites on there, depending on how many images you're using and that type of thing. And I think when you start selling a lot of pieces of art on a site, or you're having interesting situations where you're handling credit card information, that's when you're starting to look at different types of web hosting in general than just shared. If if the credit card information is not touching the server, then you can, shared hosting can be fine. But once you start processing on the server, that's when you have to look at different types of web hosting, and VPS can be one of them. There's a special, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I can reference it later. There's a different special type of web hosting that handles encrypted credit cards that make it secure, that works with Authorize.net and lots of other providers out there. So it really just depends on which direction you're going in. But if you're getting more and more serious about the e-commerce part, that's when shared hosting might not be the right fit for you. That was probably where it applies to this audience the most.
Right. So if your art is all going through e-commerce and you're processing a lot of credit cards, you're going to have to
Yeah,
look at whether or not, like, there are special tools that you might need to use if you're going to start handling more than a few credit card transactions at a time.
exactly. Yeah, that's just when your needs change completely, and you probably just need to look at something that's much more powerful and secure.
So basically, any artist who's just getting started, and is maybe making, a five-figure income in a year, is
Hmm.
probably going to be okay with shared hosting or maybe VPS hosting, and probably something like PayPal.
Exactly. Yeah, PayPal can do a lot. It's amazing. Yeah, yeah, I think that's a pretty safe assumption.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So hopefully that's a good snapshot of different web hosting options out there. I know it can be really daunting, but I hope that this house analogy helps with this a little bit. And then how does a web browser tie into all this? A web browser, many of you probably use Internet Explorer or Firefox, Safari, or Chrome. Chrome's my favorite, but everyone has their favorite. And so these browsers are such as a transporter to get you from one website to another. And so let's say in this case, you have a car, and you want to drive to your friend's house. And so you know the address, so you probably either you have it in your head, you memorize it, or maybe it's a new address, you have it in your phone or your GPS system, and you plug it in, and the car basically gets you to that place. And so basically the browser does the same thing, only it's much more faster, and kind of ties everything in together. And using the domain name or looking it up through Google helps navigate through all these different websites. And then this is what I was mentioning this a little bit earlier, how domains, we were talking about it with Cory, like you could have different domains point to the same website. This is really powerful how DNS, which stands for Domain Name Server, works. Let's say the best example I can think of is, let's say you have an existing website on GoDaddy and you want to build a new one on Bluehost. And so you do that, and when you're ready to launch the website over on Bluehost, and you want to make sure that, let's say you have, it's like FredSmithsArtGallery.com is your domain name. You go into where you register that domain name, which is, let's say, for example, Network Solutions. You change where that where things are pointing to within that domain name. And so you say, usually right now it's probably pointed at GoDaddy. So you switch over and point it to Network Solutions. I'm sorry, just point over to Bluehost, and all of a sudden you just swapped addresses. And so basically DNS lets you swap out an address. Just a second here. It's kind of magical. It just basically lets you rip off the address of one house and slap it on another. And that's basically what you're doing with your websites when you're creating a new one, or maybe you're relaunching one, or redesigning one. And so I think a lot of times when the word DNS is thrown around, it can be a little scary, but actually it does some magical things that can really be powerful and help you when you're developing new sites or doing something different in that regard.
So what we need to
Does that make
understand
sense,
there,
Cory?
yeah,
I was trying to find the best example for that, because it is kind of it feels like it's one of the more mystical things about web hosting that's out there.
right. So basically, what you're saying is the domain name server, the address of your house, whether it's coryhuff.com or whatever, can be moved
Hmm.
to different addresses. So I might have
Hmm.
Cory Huff, but the website files are hosted on GoDaddy. but then
Mm-hmm.
I can keep the same domain name and move to a different host, which might be your company,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep. Um, and that, DNS also plays into email, but I didn't want to get too complicated today because that gets a little heady. So we'll just use that as a good example, just to kind of get a snapshot of what that does. And when you hear that, mentioned, you probably hear it mentioned again when you're building a website, you'll know what your designer or web developer is talking about and have a better sense of what that means. And so let's launch into why web hosting is fun and what are some important features that artists would care about. So today I'm going to just focus on more of the cPanel, which is the dashboard of the web hosting I use, but there's so many different types out there. But this is the one that I had access to, so we'll use that in today's presentation. But most of them are very similar. As soon as you have a web hosting account, it's good to just log into the dashboard and just get a sense of what options they're giving you. A lot of things we're covering today should be available on most. So this is number one, the video tutorials. I think these are really nice, especially if you're learning how to set up an email or you're learning how to check your web statistics. A lot of times the videos are either at the top of your web hosting dashboard and there's just a whole summary of them, or sometimes they're sprinkled throughout each section and just give you a video what to do. And a lot of times there's not even sound attached to these. They're maybe 2 to 4 minutes long. They're really short. But it's nice when you're just trying to figure out what steps to take. And it can be just, overwhelming when you're learning how to do something you've never done before for the first time. And so it just is a nice little way to not to read something, but just watch it. And as artists, we all like to see things visually, I think, for the most part. So it's nice to have those cues and know what to do. And then the second thing I think is really important is website statistics. We all want to monitor and see what's happening and see if marketing campaigns are working or using the social media is bringing people to our site, if people are referring us, from another site, who's coming, when are they coming. All that information can be there. And I think the most common ones I've seen on web hosting accounts are Webalizer and AWA stats. And they don't always have the most beautiful display or easy to read stats, but they're free and they're there. And once you get the hang of it, it gets better and easier to analyze and to read the data. And you can always go the Google Analytics route once you want something more robust and stronger. But it's nice that these are there, and especially if you're just starting out, it's nice to just collect that data and see it for what it is, and then decide if you want to go down the Google Analytics route, because that can be a little overwhelming, so it's good to start simple. And then number 3, which I think is really important that probably I don't emphasize enough, is just backing things up. A lot of times these web hosting dashboards have a wizard, they call it a backup wizard, that allows you to do a full backup on everything on your site, or different pieces such as just the home directory or the website files or the databases. In the case of WordPress, there's usually a database attached to it. The nice thing about this is you make a backup. You can restore it to the same program if something was happened to your website. Let's say your WordPress site gets hacked into, or maybe you or your web developer broke something by just by default. So one thing to think about, though, when you do make a backup, before you do, is to make sure you have enough space on your web hosting account. Usually a good rule of thumb is to have 500 megs or more free space. And, there's ways to screw around that. Usually this program will let you do a full partial backup and have it immediately downloaded to your computer, which is, you really want to have a backup somewhere else besides your web hosting account. You want to have it off that server. You could maybe move it to a Dropbox, that type of thing. The one thing to note that when you have a shared hosting account, usually you can't do automated backups. You'll have to contact the web hosting company. Or, there are alternatives such as if you have a WordPress site, there's a plugin called Back WP Up, and that will allow you to do scheduled backups of your site. And I think the most recommended way to do that is to back them up into Dropbox, so you can have multiple copies. Like maybe you do it on a monthly basis. However, maybe it depends on how often you change your website. If you change it on a weekly basis, maybe that's the best way to do it. But talk about peace of mind, and You could also, if you wanted to, you could schedule something in your Google Calendar or on your phone to do this once a month. And once you get the hang of it, it's pretty simple. So it's just a great tool that could save a lot of tears and nightmares later. And then number 4, email. Of course, we all want email. So I just wanted to point out the top 3 ways I see it being used the most. First off,
Before
the
you dive
simplest way.
into
Yeah, of course.
into email stuff,
Sure.
Hannelore asks, I'm using the Updraft plugin in WordPress. Is this a
Okay.
good option? I'm saving the backups to Dropbox. Hannelore, that's a
It's
great
called
question.
Updraft.
Yeah, it's called Updraft Plus, and I've never heard of it. Have
Okay.
you?
I haven't, no, but I mean, if it's going to Dropbox, that's probably a good a good plan.
Yeah, I
Just
mean
so
that
it's
sounds
somewhere
like
else,
what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's
Yeah, I
um,
mean,
the question I might have, Nedra,
yeah, what's that?
is is that plugin taking a full backup or is it just doing the database? And then have you ever tested trying to restore your site with a backup from that plugin? Uh, because it doesn't do you any
Yeah,
good to have a year's worth of backups if they won't work. So you have to make sure that you give it a practice run once or twice.
exactly. Um, I'm trying to remember. I don't know if you can do partial. I think you just do the whole. I think it's the database and the website all included when you do use that one plugin I recommended, the back WPF.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't actually used it to restore a site, but I have used the back. What was it called? Let me go back to it. I have used the backup wizard to restore a site in the
Nice.
past, so I know that works well. But yeah, we haven't. We just started using this plugin with me and my developers, so we need to do some more testing with it because there's a whole bunch out there, and so I know that my one developer has done that before, but I haven't done it personally. So I would definitely. I think that's great just to try it out and make sure it works like you want it to before you're 100% committed to any of those plugins or tools. Was there any other questions?
No, I think that was it.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So email. There's so many different ways to do your email, and it's such an important. I mean, it's a mandatory thing in our world to have an email set up, and the best thing to do is having an email set up in the domain of your website or your blog, so that it's your name, like Cory is Cory@abundantartist.com. It's crucial. People expect that you have that. So these are like the top 3 ways that people accomplish that. So just basically setting up your email in your web hosting account, and then putting that credential information into Outlook or Thunderbird is one way a lot of people do it, or you can do that within your phone too. If you're just starting out and you're not wanting to have two make separate email accounts, one way is to set up a forward. So you have an email such as like fred@thisismygallery.com, and it's forwarding to fred.smith@gmail.com, which is a personal email account. And so you can just check all your email at once and not having to have multiple accounts. And that's nice to do for a little while until things get more serious and you get more business and traffic to your site.
Yeah,
And
that's what I
then
do.
number
I
3,
just run
which is,
everything through my Gmail account.
what's that?
I just run everything through my Gmail account and have all my other emails forward to my Gmail.
Yeah, it can be a lifesaver if you're having multiple things happening at once. And it just depends on what your sanity check is, I guess. And then what my favorite thing is the Gmail business solutions, and I'm lucky I got grandfathered into their plan years ago when they weren't charging anything for using their Gmail and their Google Docs and Calendar and all that. And then I think it was just last couple of years they started charging $5 a month, and I've helped set some of my clients up with the $5 a month account, and it's been nice because the thing with the $5 is you get the support, and that has come into play where I've had to actually call Google, which I don't think you're able to track a number down if you don't have the support. It's really hard to find a way to call them, but I've actually called Google and had them help me solve some email problems, and so
Yeah,
that's a nice way to do it too. And then you have that domain name attached from your website attached, and it's all through Google. What were
yeah.
you going to say,
So
Cory?
Cindy asks, can you respond from a Gmail account or other account as that website email address, or will it show as your personal address? So
I
I
believe,
do,
yeah, you can, yeah, you probably just Cory, huh?
yeah, I do this. I've got, my Cory at Cory Huff email address for my performance
Mm-hmm.
work. And then I've got my personal account. And then I've got Cory at The Abundant Artist. And then I've got a couple of other
Mm-hmm.
projects. And so I set all of those emails up in my Gmail account as an alias. You do that under settings. And I think you have
Mm-hmm.
to, do you have to have a business account to do that? You might have to.
I think you do now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Google's gotten stricter about it.
So I run everything through my Gmail account and just select which email address I'm responding from.
Mm-hmm.
Hannelore says no,
Yeah,
you
that
don't
can
you
be a
don't
real
have to have a business
lifesaver,
account.
depending.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
Hannelore
Does
says
anyone?
she doesn't have a business account and
Hmm?
she does it that way. So okay,
Oh, okay. Okay, good. That's good to
cool.
hear.
And
Google's always
then
changing it on us. Mm-hmm.
yeah, Sanad says, is it necessary to rent web hosting for a beginner? Are there alternatives to paying for web hosting?
Well, it depends on what you want to accomplish. I mean, if you wanted to start a blog, a free blog, you could you could uh, get a Blogger account or
Mm-hmm.
WordPress.com, and that's a really quick way to get started on blogging or just a simple website, and you can always migrate it later to a self-hosted website.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's lots of other uh, CMS CMS tools out there that let you do things for free. I think Wix is one of them, Wix, that does
Mm-hmm.
it for free or really cheaply. So yeah, there's ways. It depends. It really depends on how much control you want over your website and how much you want to customize it. I mean, those are and if you want to monetize it, those are the kind of the three things I think you have to consider when you're making those decisions.
And I think that really goes to the heart of what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
Why would you go through all the work of setting up web hosting and pay for it rather than use a
Mhm.
service like Squarespace or
Mhm.
some other
Yeah.
artist website company? Like, why would you do that? And it's all about you
Mhm.
mentioned control. It's all about that control, right? Like maybe you can talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Right. And so I believe that I wrote a blog post about this. WordPress.com versus WordPress.org. I think just that alone, I know that WordPress.com lets you have access to certain plugins and certain themes, but it's really limited. So if you wanted to add certain ad space or do certain kind of affiliations on your website, I think when you use WordPress.com, you're pretty limited. So you can't always do what you want through those types of situations or those types of agreements. Um, and Squarespace, I'm not sure what you're able to do, how you can monetize that. There's probably certain things you can do, but again, it's just how much they're going to let you within the realms of their basically the size software agreement you're agreeing to with them. And like Squarespace, you're having to pay a monthly fee and do this and that, and there's just pros and cons. Squarespace lets you use their software, and they'll update it and keep it updated for you because you're paying this monthly fee, and it's definitely more of a premium fee than you pay with having a self-hosted WordPress site. It just really depends on what your end goal is and how much you want control over it and how much you want to customize it. If you have a really grand vision of having this website that's going to grow, and you don't necessarily want this template that you're limited by the colors and the layout and that type of thing. It can be very frustrating if you get stuck in that, and it doesn't really highlight the branding that you're using with maybe a product you're selling, or even just if you're going down the direction of an artist, it may not really speak to what you're doing, and that could be very frustrating, I think. So it's good to to have a very strong vision of what you want to accomplish before you make those bigger commitments to what kind of software you're going to use.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Great. The last thing I think that's interesting to artists to use is the one-click install, and this is labeled different things depending on what web hosting dashboard you're using. Usually, you can find it in the software or the services section in the dashboard. The one I use is called Quick Install. It might also be called Simple Scripts or Fantastico Deluxe. But that's usually where you can find the one-click install for WordPress, and that's what we're going to jump into next, is how to do that. I think this should be a pretty nice overview and not too technical. so you can have a better sense of how easy it is to set up WordPress. Just the bare bones, of course. We're not going to get into too many technical details, but just to kind of get a sense of what that looks like. And so, yeah, the number one thing to start with is that where to find that software, the one-click install to set up WordPress. Almost every web host has it, so that's the first step. And then this one, I'd like to walk you through what you're filling out here exactly. When you're installing WordPress, it should look pretty similar to this. The version will usually be displayed, and most of the times it's going to be the version of WordPress that's the latest, but not always. So keep an eye out for that. A lot of times when you install WordPress and you log into it, it'll say if you don't have the latest version or not, and you can update it. But just be aware of that. And one of the more important things to keep an eye on is where you're installing WordPress. A lot of times they'll ask you, like right here, you'll see there's the domain name bluedeerforesthosting.com, and then there's some space, a slash with space after it. And what you'll want to focus on is if you're going to install a new version of WordPress, like maybe you're creating a whole brand new site, and you never touched this web hosting account before. And then what you'll be doing is you'll be installing WordPress in the root. So after that slash, you'll just leave it blank. But in the case that you already have an installation of WordPress installed, and you're maybe doing another project or you're going to do a redesign, after that slash, you'll want to put something else so that WordPress will install it in this other folder, and maybe you'll call it /new or /redesign or just something that you know that that's where it's going to be built, and then you can later repoint your domain like we talked about to point to this this folder where your installation of WordPress will be. Enable auto upgrades. This is kind of becoming redundant because I think with the latest version of WordPress, it just automatically upgrades and renews to the latest version of the software, so that may not really apply so much now. The admin email is really important because once you click to install now, what's going to happen is this software is going to generate emails that's going to be sent to you that will have the path to log into WordPress, the URL path, your admin username, and then your admin password. And that password is automatically generated, so if you don't have the right email in here, you will never get that password. You'll be kind of stuck in limbo. So it's really good to make sure the email that you're going to put in here is one that's most current. Your blog title isn't so important. You can always change that later, so you can leave this blank for now. And then let's talk about
Nedra,
go ahead.
There's a great question from
Sure.
Hannelore in here about, so is this where you would test your revisions? I want to throw in here, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, Hannelore, but you could, in theory, do like a couple different installs of WordPress.
Oh, yeah.
And you could do like, one for bluedeerforesthosting.com, and then you could have one that was bluedeerforesthosting.com/revisions, right? Where you can do two different WordPress installs and try stuff with the one on revisions before you put it into the live site.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, I'm going to be doing that next week for a client. They have an existing site and they want to have essentially a playground where they can try out some new plugins and try out, reorganize the content. So we're copying, or actually in this case, we're copying an exact replica of their website and with the database included and moving it over into a new folder for them. So that might be a little bit more work to make sure that database is connected. And that's a little more technical, but that's the right idea if you wanted to just create an installation of WordPress in a different folder so you have a testing ground or a playground. Definitely, that's a great idea, especially if you want to try out some new things and you don't want to make them live. Were there any other questions, Cory?
No, that's it for now.
Okay.
There are some other questions, but we'll get to them later on in the presentation.
Sure. Okay. So the admin user, I just want to talk about this a little bit because it's important. A lot of times the default is just the word admin, but the problem with that is everyone's using the word admin, and so hackers like to be able to bypass that immediately and start breaking down your password. So it's wise to use something other than admin, or just even adding on to the word admin, like maybe the username could be admin Blue Deer Forest, and then replace all of the vowels within forest and blue into letters, or add some characters at the end, or just scramble it up a little bit so it's not just admin. So it will give an extra layer of protection to prevent hackers from hacking into your WordPress site. And then the last couple things here, first name, last name, that's not important really as much as what I mentioned, because you can just add those things later. And after that, you can hit install now, and it should only take a few minutes or even just a minute to install WordPress. And then once it's installed, it will send you an email to log into your WordPress account. And so this is basically what the dashboard of your WordPress account looks like once you're logged in, give or take. And so let's jump into how to install a theme. And so you'll go down to the navigation on the left-hand side of your WordPress installation, go down to Appearance, and under that you'll see the word Themes. So click on that, and you'll be brought up a page that's similar to that. And then up at the top you see the word Themes 7, and then the button Add New. And within there, you'll click that, and you'll see some of the default themes that WordPress has, such as the 2014, 2013, 2011. Those are great themes, but a lot of times you want something that's a little bit more, has a lot more features. Maybe it's catered more toward your industry, has slideshows and gallery features, that type of thing. But so within here, you can either add new, or you can upload the theme that you've downloaded, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And so after you do that, it's so nice because you can go back to the themes page, and you can either activate this theme you downloaded or preview it. And I always recommend to preview it first, unless it's like a new installation of WordPress and there's nothing on there and no one's really looking at it. Then you can activate a theme and it'd be fine. But if it's already existing WordPress site and it's live and you have a lot of information on it, then it's always good to preview it, because sometimes you'd be surprised how the navigation might be a little screwy or off because of the theme's just laid out completely different than what your other theme was.
Yeah, Nedra,
But basically,
Victor
what's that?
asks a great question. He says,
Yeah.
so he used Mojo or something like that
Hmm.
to install WordPress, but after
Okay.
his installation was done, he didn't see the admin screen that you were talking about. And I
Oh,
think
uh-huh.
the one step that we might have skipped there is you have to type in the admin URL in the address
Oh, uh-huh.
bar, right? Like
Yeah.
so everything that you do in the hosting, like you set it all up in the hosting in the one-click install,
Yeah. Hmm.
and then you have to open a new window or a new tab in your browser and
Right,
go
right.
to your whatever your domain is
Hmm.
slash wp dash admin and enter all your admin
Hmm.
and all your login information there.
Right, exactly. And sometimes even when you get that email, there's a link you can click within that, and that'll take you to the default browser, whatever you set up on your computer, and you can log in that way too. And then you can bookmark it or put it in LastPass, or however you manage your information that way.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's basically some 5 easy steps to set up a WordPress site. I mean, it's just a really basic installation. We didn't talk about plugins, we didn't talk about a lot of the other details, but that's another day. So that gives you a sense of what, just a starting point, and hopefully demystify what that means and what it looks like. And so I'd love to talk about themes, because that is definitely one subject that I think can be pretty daunting to a lot of people, because it's overwhelming. You start, I don't know how many of you guys have been on the website Theme Forest, but you start looking on there for a theme, and before you know it, you probably looked at 30 or 40 themes, and you're cross-eyed, you're feeling
Mm-hmm.
exhausted. You're like, wow, what am I going to pick? I can't decide. And it's not even about the cost. Sometimes it's just about what, you're trying to envision what your website could look like, and it's really hard to make that decision. So I wanted to just cover a few topics, or a few elements that will help you make that decision easier next time you're in that situation. And so things to think about when you're choosing a theme, just right off the bat, is like, it's the first impression people are going to get from your website, whether it be that it's this really easy to use, simple theme, or maybe you have a lot of, great, like an amazing slideshow or something that's blowing people away when they first enter your site. There's lots of different ways to approach it. Themes are great because they help search engines find your pages and your blog posts. Some of them have some amazing SEO built into them, which stands for search engine optimization, which basically helps, just Google helps them find your site. And then most themes can be completely customized to make your website look very unique. It just depends on how much work or how much you want to hire someone to do that. or that's the thing to think about too. Is if you want a theme as is, or do you want to break it down and rearrange it and change the colors, change this, change that? It's something to think about before you start looking at them. And so the first thing to think about, I think, is what are your end goals? What is the functionality you want this theme to do? Like, the best example I can think of is if you're going to be selling products on your site, you want a theme that's set up to do that type of e-commerce, has like the shopping cart layout features to it. Otherwise, you're going to create yourself a lot more work, because it's just the layout. The layout of that is directly, there's different pages that are supposed to be part of the whole checkout process. So if you don't have that already, it could be a really frustrating situation for you and your web developer to build that out. So it's nice to have that already as something that's kind of on your checklist of things that are required. Maybe you really want a slideshow on the homepage. It's nice to find a theme that already has that built into it. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about just kind of highlight plugins here, and how it's nice to have a theme that has a lot of this functionality built into it and not have to rely on plugins so much, because I don't know how many of you guys know this, but plugins, the more you have, the more you're at risk with your WordPress site to have something go wrong. Because some plugins remain being supported by whoever who builds them, and there'll be updates on them, and some will just die off. And then the ones that aren't supported may not work well with the others and play well with the other plugins, and then cause things to go down. I've seen this happen a few times where one plugin is just old and it doesn't want to work the way you want it to, or isn't keeping up with the latest versions of WordPress. So I think something to think about is if you have this built-in functionality into a theme, you're already on the right foot, and it's good to educate yourself on what that looks like. But the flip side of that is to keep it simple. I've known some folks to get the theme. I've heard this so many times. They'll get a theme that someone recommended to them, and then they're stumped because they can't figure out how to use the theme. They thought it was going to solve all their problems, but actually it's creating hurdles in accomplishing what they want to get done, which is just simply blogging and maybe putting up a gallery or something like that. So maybe for the first version of your website, it's nicer to have a theme that's simpler, and you can always add on things later, or upgrade the theme later once you get more comfortable blogging or just selling products or whatever you're planning to do with your website, because you want to be able to be productive with it. You don't want to be overwhelmed by it. 'Cause I've known some people, even myself, I've had websites where I set it up and then it takes 7 steps to accomplish something because the theme is so complicated, and then I think to myself, why am I making this so hard on myself?
Yeah.
So I think it's good to keep that in mind when you're reviewing things.
Yep. And one of the ways I'll say, I don't know how you figure out how easy a theme is to use, but one of the things that I'll do is I'll look at reviews, right? I look at reviews and see how many people have written about that theme, and are there any tutorials out there, and look at some of the tutorials before I invest in paying for a theme.
Oh yeah, it's always nice. I think it's a really good sign when a theme has tutorials. If it doesn't, that's kind of a red flag going, maybe no one's really touched this, and maybe it's going to just be outdated really fast. And yeah, I think that's a really good point, Cory. And then kind of going along with that is how much support does this theme have for mobile? Most of the time, current themes will support most browsers, and they'll list, which browsers and which versions they'll work in, and that's not so bad. But it's the mobile part that can be really tricky, and so I think a good theme will show what a mobile version of their website of their theme will look like. They'll have like a iPhone or Android, like a little screen like that you can view the theme in and play with it, interact with it. And it's always good to try to bring it up on your own smartphone if you can, and see what it feels and looks like. And the thing with mobile themes, you got to keep in mind is try not to go crazy with the navigation, because we only have, our eyes are only big enough to see all these little pieces of text on a screen. And so I just had trying to solve this problem with a client right now where their navigation is a little out of control, but they want to make sure it all fits on a screen on iPhone. So we're trying to create some interesting solutions for that. But I think it's really, you don't want to ever get a theme that doesn't work with mobile, because you're just really shooting yourself in the foot, because it's such a people, like I think 40% of websites are looked at through a mobile device, whether it be a tablet or a phone these days, and that number is growing daily. So I think it's really important to consider that when you're looking at themes. And then going back to what Cory's saying, how much support, tutorials, reviews, and then just support itself is important, because the big difference between a free theme and a premium theme or commercial one is free themes are great, and there's some amazing ones out there, but is it going to be supported down the road as WordPress grows? Because WordPress is an ongoing open source software that's constantly being updated, and
Yeah,
some of
sort of
these
like a
themes aren't
living,
going to.
breathing entity that's
Yeah,
always
it
always
really
learning
is.
and always growing.
It's like this really amazing creature that has a mind of its own sometimes. So, but the problem with the free themes is that if it doesn't plan to grow with WordPress, and if you're not wanting to update it or have someone else update it for you, you're vulnerable. And I've seen this happen where somebody's installed a free theme, and then a year later they get hacked into because it's not been updated properly. And it's so sad, because you have to start from scratch all over again. So I think to save a lot of heartache and trouble is to definitely go the direction of more of a commercial theme, where you buy it, the support is included, and you have these updates or these notifications, alerts of, okay, update this theme now, because WordPress is at this version, so this will work now, and it's all compatible. And I think my two favorite commercial themes places to go are StudioPress and Woo themes. So there's elegant themes, there's a ton out there, but you just have to figure out which ones build the themes that you really like and that speak to you, because again, this is what your website's going to look like.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is probably a good time for you to take over, Cory, and if there's any more questions and that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to thank you, Nedra, for taking the time to walk through some of this with us. I know it's a little hairy, and I appreciate the questions that came through
Oh,
from the
sure.
audience, because it helps us clarify things.
Mm-hmm.
Nedra was kind enough to put together a special offer for people who attended this webinar. We'll be sending out a copy of this video along with a link to all the stuff that we talked about, and this link that is here on Nedra's screen. We're going to get to the rest of everybody's questions. Just real quick to highlight this special hosting offer that Nedra's company has. Basically, she's offering you 6 months of web hosting, a 30-minute WordPress coaching or training session, and then 6 months of a special security package for $75. That's a pretty screaming deal. Having the security and the one-on-one walkthrough of how to use your WordPress site is really awesome. So thanks, Nedra, for offering that. You can visit that link now. It's live. We'll also be sending that link around for everybody who attended the webinar. So as far as the rest of everybody's questions, wow, there's a lot of them. Okay. So Lisa
Mm-hmm.
says, what is the best free resource to use to follow up with this information? As I just mentioned, Lisa, we will email everybody, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll have a link to this, and this video is recorded, so you'll be able to watch this later as well. Let's see. Levon says, if using Squarespace or one of the other services, what do you want to pay attention to if you plan on having an e-store? I'm not quite sure what you mean, Levon, there. I think what you're saying is, yeah, I'm not quite sure. Levon, if you're still on, I think I might unmute you and ask you to clarify your question there. Let's
Mm-hmm.
find you here, Levon. There you are. Levon, are you there? Levon, are you there? I think maybe her microphone isn't working. I can hear someone typing. Oh, Levon says her mic isn't working. Okay. Let's. Okay, we'll come back. Levon's going to clarify her question, and we'll come back to it. Tanya says, I'm unclear about the admin username that Nedra was explaining. So, Nedra, I think you were just talking about coming up with good security for your username instead of
Mm-hmm. Right.
just using admin, which is what everybody uses.
Mm-hmm.
So hackers know that everybody uses admin, so they try, like if they're trying to guess your password, they'll use
Mm-hmm.
admin. Uh, now we can see your calendar, Nedra. Uh,
Right. So why don't you like instead of having them just jump into try to hack into your password, why don't you make it harder for them and come up with a really creative username? And it doesn't have to include the word admin at all. It could be whatever you want.
right.
It could be just a second here. There we go. It could be a combination of just like you create passwords. It could be something really very unique and that is just harder to for someone to guess at. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Hannelore says that she's using a plugin for WordPress that allows her to use different themes on different pages, um, asking if that's the right way to use it. Uh,
Hmm.
Hannelore, I would say that that's a highly specific use case, and I would be wondering why you're trying to use different themes on different parts of your website.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
you can cause some problems if you're using different themes on different pages. Um, Yeah, Hannelore, are you around still? Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna unmute you. Hannelore, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, excellent.
Can you? I'm
Yeah,
here.
why are you trying to use different themes on different pages?
So, I mean, I haven't started implementing this yet, but I want to be putting um, some e-commerce functionality on my website, and I have a theme from Elegant Themes that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
But the only one that they totally recommend for e-commerce is their Divi
Mm-hmm.
theme, their
Mm-hmm.
newest theme.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if I should try to use that theme on my sales pages.
So, Nedra, do you have any thoughts there?
I'm not very familiar with those themes as much, so I make sure I understand. So are you trying to utilize the e-commerce theme of Elegant Themes so you can work with that, and then also have like a much more, I don't know, what's the other theme you're using that besides the e-commerce one?
So I'm using another theme from Elegant Themes called Deep
Hmm.
Focus, and I've built
Okay.
my whole website using Deep Focus, and I really like it. But
Yeah.
there's certain pages that I want to have um, that I'm not sure if the Deep Focus theme is really going to be right for them.
Hmm.
The e-commerce pages would be one example. There's also like I've been thinking about changing my like having some landing page
Hmm.
functionality that just doesn't look right on my deep focus theme. But I don't want to change my whole theme because I've put a lot of work into it already, making sure that everything looks nice
Hmm.
using
Well,
deep
my
Yeah.
question
focus.
for you,
So
yeah.
well, one thing
Uh-huh.
that comes to mind is um, so managing two themes on the same site is going to be a pain. Um,
Mm,
an easier solution might be to just program WordPress or WooCommerce compatibility into your existing theme. Uh, that might work better for you in the long run, but that would
okay.
require some coding knowledge. You might need to hire a developer to do that, but I think that would work better for you in the long run. Nedra, would you disagree with that?
No, that's a great solution. I mean, WooCommerce is a pretty solid way to go when it comes to integrating a shopping cart into WordPress, and it's not going anywhere. So I feel like it's a good investment if you're going to go that route. I agree with
Okay.
Cory. Two themes, it could be a real nightmare to try to keep current, and I think um, you might lose your audience if you switch between the themes a lot. They're going to be confused if they're on the right website. Like, you just don't want to lose people in the whole process, especially when you're trying, you're having someone purchase something from you. You want to make sure it's as seamless as possible. So yeah, I think I definitely agree with
Right.
Cory on that.
Okay. All right.
Good luck, Hannelore.
Thank you.
It was a great question.
Thanks.
I haven't met too people that have used two themes, so thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, Irene says, any suggestions on WordPress themes for beginners? And then she asks about dynamic or prose themes. I would say, Irene, go ahead and use the same criteria that Nedra outlined there about support and Uh, does it offer support? Is it compatible with current technologies and browsers? I'm also going to send around a list of some of my favorite themes, and I'm sure if Nedra has any to contribute, we'll throw those out as well. Okay, let's see. Dawn says, I'm struggling with a theme choice. I want people to opt into my email list as a number one thing to do at my website to grow my platform for my book. So she has a book and her art, and she wants to get people on the mailing list, and she wants to do e-commerce. That's a great question. So basically, she's got two different kinds of products that she's trying to offer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what should she be looking for?
Um, I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, how probably the end goal is to make sure that it's easy to purchase off your website. So sticking with themes that have the shopping cart functionality built into it is probably the easiest path to go down, and just eliminate other distractions and possibilities along the way. And so, I think going back to Blue Themes, it's a pretty reliable e-commerce solution for WordPress. They have a lot of great themes on there, and so I think that would be a good place to start, and then take it from there if that's not really, if that's not feeling good. But I think there'd be some things in there that would satisfy that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. The other question that I would have for you, Dawn, is do you know what your like how much research have you done to know like other artists out there who have books and art? How many of those websites have you looked at? And have you done research so that you can figure out what you want your site to look like? And then when you know what you want your site to look like and what you want the functionality to be, then go start looking for a theme that would support that. That might be a way to approach it.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just shared a link in the chat to, there's a checklist that I offer for free on my website that will walk you through how to do some research and figure out what the right theme and design is for your site. Let's see. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so Hannah, I'll let you take this one, Nedra. So Hannah is about to,
Sure.
she's looking at renewing with her current web host with which is
Mm-hmm.
Bluehost.
Mm-hmm.
Why should she use your company instead of Bluehost?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I'm a little different than a lot of web hosting companies out there. I'm much more of like a smaller boutique style where I actually have relationships with all my customers. So I'm small enough I can do that, and that's where I want to stay. I don't want to grow big like Bluehost or any of those out there. So, I've been doing this for 8 years, and anytime there's a problem, I have all my customers contact me immediately, and then we definitely create a step-by-step case of how to solve them. For the most part, those haven't happened very often, but I think the most unique part about working with me is you have that personal relationship with myself. That a lot of times you're just a number in the cog of the system with other web hosting companies. So if you want something more intimate, I'm the better one to go with, I believe. I really take care of my customers and really believe in what I'm doing.
Awesome. Amy says, how long is your offer valid?
That's a good question, Cory. I don't know if we really put a time cap on it. How long, when you do these type of things, how long does the offer last for? Is there a certain amount of time, or?
Well, generally what I've seen in the past is
Yeah.
depending on like if you get slammed with a whole bunch of people jumping over to jump on your hosting and you
Right.
get
Right.
overwhelmed with that coaching thing,
Yeah.
then you might put a limit on that. So,
Mhm.
you don't have a hard limit on that, but you do have a hard limit on your time and how many people you can coach. So,
Yeah.
if
Exactly.
you want this offer, I would suggest jumping on it sooner rather than later, just because uh, a lot of times when we do these offers, the companies like yours get a lot of response,
Mhm.
and then we have to shut it down because it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
So no hard and fast rule, but do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I think that sounds good.
Yep. Is it generally best to have your hosting somewhere other than where you purchased your domain? Question from Cindy.
That's a good question. I think it just depends. It's just a personal preference. Um, you know, just like anytime you're purchasing anything, and you know, sometimes you go to Macy's, you do all your shopping there, and sometimes you go to Target and you do some of your shopping there. I think it just really depends on what your choices are and who you want to work with and where you spend your money. And you know, do you want to support this web hosting company or this one, or you know, it really depends. That's yeah. I think everyone's so different in that regard.
Right. Levon says, what should you pay attention to when you have lots of small products? And yeah, I'm not sure how to answer this question, Levon.
Yeah.
Maybe you can post in the Facebook group later. Levon's in my Facebook coaching, in my coaching for artists Facebook group.
Okay.
Maybe I'll have her post a little more detail on that question later.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Ramon Gill says, is there any trend of people using black color in the background or white? What's better, black or white in the background?
I just talking to graphic designers and knowing what I know, I think white's usually better. It doesn't necessarily have to be white. I think off-white can be really relaxing on the eyes. I find that black is really dramatic and should be used sparingly depending on what you're trying to accomplish and what industry you're in or what you're trying to convey to your audience. So I think I mean definitely more on the white.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the same as well. Light color background, dark text. Okay. Garrick says, I have a Squarespace site right now. Should I move from Squarespace to WordPress?
Well, I guess it depends on if you're happy at Squarespace, or what are you doing with that site? How long have you been with them? I mean, there's lots of questions to ask to see why you're considering moving. Are you not getting the customization part? Are you not having full control, like we were talking about earlier? You know, there's pros and cons to Squarespace accounts. They can be really good for some people.
Yeah. I would say the number of artists that I've talked to, Garrick, I would say if you are happy with the look of your Squarespace site and the level of customization and control you have over it, and you're happy with the price, then just stick with Squarespace because it's an easy to use interface. There's a learning curve with WordPress. It's probably going to take you, a week's worth of time to get your site up and running and get it to be the way you want it to be, or longer. So if you're happy with what you have now, stick with it. If you're not happy, then just be aware that there's a learning curve and you're going to have to, go through some of that process.
Definitely.
Let's see. Cory Calentropio, I'm sure I said that wrong, says, thank you for demystifying the whole process of getting started with WordPress. Will you or have you already had a similar seminar about MailChimp and setting up a newsletter? Cory, yes. I have a course. We cover MailChimp and getting set up there pretty extensively in the Content Marketing for Artists course, which is at theabundantartist.com/content. And MailChimp.com also has a whole bunch of video tutorials on how to use their product. So there should be lots of resources there for figuring that out. Let's see. Anderson Moore says, is there a way to capture RSS feed email info by using a cover page for that feed or subscription? Does that make sense to you, Nedra?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they're trying to accomplish. What was that again?
A way to capture RSS feed email info by using a cover page for that feed or subscription. I think what he's asking, is there a way for me to get the email addresses of the people who subscribe to my RSS feed? I think that's what he's asking. And there's not. Yeah, there's not.
I don't think so. I think that that's kind of a whole different animal there. So,
if you're looking to get the email address of subscribers, I would just suggest setting up a newsletter and encouraging people to sign up for your newsletter rather than your RSS feed.
Yeah, you have more control over it too.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Siggy says, what's the difference between using a theme that is WooCommerce compatible versus a theme created by WooCommerce itself?
That's a good question. Like last year, we built a site for a client using a StudioPress theme with WooCommerce plugins. It works great. I imagine, I don't know, I haven't really worked with a WordPress theme in a while, so I really can't answer that directly, but I imagine there's probably some perks working with WordPress directly versus no, like StudioPress. I'm sorry, or WooThemes directly versus StudioPress that would give you some advantages. But the Woo e-commerce functionality has just gotten better and better. So it's I don't know. Have
Yeah.
you had much experience with that, Cory?
I think it's a preference thing.
Yeah.
Woo Themes has a handful of themes. I
Mhm.
really love their Canvas theme. I'm all hot to trot about it. I think it's a great theme. But it's just a preference thing. All of Woo themes are very businessy, e-commerce centric,
Mhm.
and so if you want something that is more designer and more highly designed, then you might want a different company's themes. But it's just a matter of aesthetic, I think.
Yeah, like Elegant Themes is definitely more artistic, and that could still satisfy the what you're trying to accomplish.
Yep. Irene says, what happens after 6 months on your special offer?
Well, I will contact you and see if you want to continue uh, doing the web hosting and everything we talked about, and then renew a contract with you for a year or monthly, or there's different pricing plans that we can set up. So it just depends on what works for you. But yeah, I usually have a conversation and we figure out what's the best decision.
Yeah. Okay, great. How do I transfer my domain name to a different hosting company? Are there any legal problems? So whichever hosting company you move to, Rick, will give you instructions on how to do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
We're over time, but we've only got 3 questions left. So let's
Okay.
see. Ramon says, "Is it a good idea to link your poetry on your website? As I like linking my quotes and poetry to my paintings." Yeah, absolutely. I see no problem with that. Amy says, I may have missed the answer to this, but I'm nervous about people finding me. Help? Is there help on how to set up ways to be found online? Is this fairly simple to do for the new WordPress users? Like how to get found online? That is a whole other course.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's,
Definitely.
yeah, Amy, go take my content marketing course, at theabundantartist.com/content. Let's see. Deborah says, I'm interested in creating a site for a band that has their music on Bandcamp. Do you have any experience working with themes that integrate music and possibly music for sale in an e-commerce framework? Deborah, Bandcamp has embeddable stores as part of their product. So you can just create a page on WordPress and then embed the Bandcamp store on the page. I just happen to know that. I don't know why. Um, and then any resources to point me to that would help with figuring out a music site. Uh, Again, I would take a look at the WordPress, the artist checklist, the website checklist for. Oh boy, I am tired. The checklist for artist websites that should give you some resources on how to research and figure out what you want your site to look like, and some of the tools that are available for figuring that out.
That's a really good question. Yeah, I haven't really
Yeah,
come across that. Yeah.
yeah. All right, cool. Thank you so much, everybody. We are over time, and I appreciate you sticking around to the end. And hope you have a great day. And this recording will be made available early next week. Thanks, everybody.